Hello everybody. Today we will discuss the basics of capital budgeting. Let us understand what is a capital expenditure. So as per accounting, a capital expenditure is an expense that is shown as an asset on the balance sheet and is depreciated over its life. For example, if a company buys a machinery, that is an expense and it will be shown as a fixed asset reflected on the balance sheet, and it is subject to depreciation over its life. When we use the word expenditure, please keep in mind we have two types of expenditure. A capital expenditure, which we have just explained, and the revenue expenditure. Now, revenue expenditure is normally associated with 1 year and it is therefore short term in nature, and it is associated with your operations. So when I buy raw materials to be used for making a product, that will come under a revenue expenditure. Now, how to classify it as a capital or a revenue expenditure is dictated by conventions. For example, how will you treat an advertising expense or an R&D expense? Both of them, advertising or a research and development expense, you may spend the money in 1 year, but your output is going to come over a period of years. So therefore, you can consider it both ways. You can treat it as a capital expenditure, or you can say it is a revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure because you've spent the money this year. Capital expenditure because you'll say the benefits are going to come over a period of years. So in such cases, it is the company policy which will tell you how you are going to treat this. From a finance viewpoint, capital expenditures have long-term consequences. They involve substantial outlays and it is difficult and expensive to reverse. For example, if you decide to set up a manufacturing unit, it is going to be set up and it is going to run for years to come. So therefore it has long-term consequences. And yes, it is very expensive. It will involve substantial outlays. You are going to run into crores in setting up that manufacturing unit. And halfway through, you cannot say, I do not want to continue, because it is difficult to reverse such decisions. And in case you really do not want to continue and you wish to dispose it off, you will not even get the value for the unit, because when it is a case of distress sale, you do not get true value of your assets. That is why capital expenditures have to be taken after a lot of consideration. A capital budgeting decision reflects the strategy of the firm and directs how a firm allocates its capital. So the capital budgeting decision is dependent on the strategy of the firm. If the strategy is that we want to expand our market, which means that you will have to produce more. In order to produce more, you may need more machinery and more raw material. So therefore, what will happen? Your fund from the organization is going to be channelized accordingly, and you will be allowed to buy new machinery and also procure more of raw materials. That is why it is also referred to as strategic asset allocation. In a capital budgeting decision, all the departments of the company are involved because they all have a role to play out there. In the example where I mentioned that you would like to expand your market share, obviously marketing will tell you what is the area where you would like to go. And because you want to expand, you have to produce more, which calls for inputs from production as well as engineering department. And because you have to buy new machinery, finance is involved out there. And when you're talking of producing more, it may mean that from running a single shift, you are going to move to double shift. So therefore, human resource will also come into the picture. These are the steps involved in a capital budgeting process. Identification of potential investment opportunities, assembling of proposed investments, decision making, preparation of capital budget and appropriations, implementation, and finally performance review. We will go through them one by one. Step 1 is identification of opportunities. And how can you do that? It can be done if you monitor the external environment regularly. On the basis of this monitoring the external environment, you will be able to identify investment opportunities. You also have to do a SWOT analysis. Find out what are the strengths and weaknesses of your organization is, along with the opportunities that you have seen and the threats that are there in the external environment. Based on this, you will define a corporate strategy. Share this strategy and perspectives with persons who are involved in this process, and also motivate employees to make suggestions. So when you do all these kind of exercises, it will help you in targeting a specific investment opportunity that you can pursue. So such opportunities, when they are found out, you will have to convert it into a proposal. Now these proposals are submitted in a standardized form. Each company will have its own format as to how the proposals are to be submitted. And these proposals are routed through several persons. This is done because you will get then feedback from these different people, and they will be able to tell you what is going to work and what is not going to work. So it is a good idea to route it through several persons. And besides this, once the project or the proposal is accepted, it will also bring about a sense of belongingness from these people. You can have different categories of proposals. The first is replacement. So if a machine has become obsolete or it is not functioning properly anymore, your proposal is that you want to bring a new machinery. You want to buy a new machinery. So that is a replacement. Expansion is when you want to produce more of what you have already been producing. So therefore, either you are going to buy more machinery, that is one scenario, or the second is that with the existing machinery only, you are going to increase your working shifts. All right, so maybe from first one shift, you are going to 2 shifts, or maybe maximum 3 shifts. So that is an expansion proposal. You can have a diversification proposal where you are saying that we will introduce a new product. Then there are mandatory investments that you have to do. For example, pollution control devices that you have to buy and keep in your organization, or firefighting devices that you must have. Or if you have women in the workforce, then you must arrange for a creche. So these are obligatory investments. Then you have research and development. And finally, the miscellaneous. Miscellaneous investments or proposals are not related to operations, but like they will help make life of your employee a little better. Okay, so therefore these are miscellaneous. Then the third step is decision making. Once your proposals are in place, the company will have to decide which one is going to be accepted and which one is not. And for this, we use different techniques like NPV, which is net present value, IRR, which is internal rate of return, ARR, that is accounting rate of return, then a benefit cost ratio, and payback. So these are the techniques that we will learn about in details in our next video. Also keep in mind that your proposal has to pass through a system of rupee gateways. It means that in the hierarchy, different levels have different sanctioning powers. So depending on the cost of your project, it will have to move through different levels in the hierarchy for getting a approval. Number 4 is appropriation. In the previous one, we said that you have to pass it through the different levels in the hierarchy for your financial approval. But this only approval is not enough. You must have an appropriation order. All right. So appropriation order will actually state very specifically that this project has been accepted and funds are reserved against this project. If you do not have the appropriation order and you have only an approval order, you may land up in trouble. So therefore, ensure that there is an appropriation order. This will ensure that fund position is satisfactory at the time of implementation. During implementation, before you jump into implementation, make sure that you have formulated the project very well. Make sure you have done the homework. Make sure you have researched on it. Your preliminary comprehensive study has to be exhaustive. You must know the market that you are going to target. You must know the products that you are going to produce. You must know the cost associated with that. You must know what price you will be selling at. All right, so all this has to be done in a thorough manner. Use the principle of responsibility accounting, which means that you must assign specific responsibility to a project manager for completing the project within a defined time frame and cost limit. If there is time overrun, there is going to be cost overrun. And what will happen? Because of this, your initial investment, the initial outlay that you had projected, is going to rise manifold. And if the initial cost of the project rises, then it is difficult for you to maintain a net present value, a proper net present value. And when you are implementing, use these network techniques which are available, like PERT, Program Evaluation and Review Technique, or CPM, that is the critical path method. These are helpful for monitoring purpose. They will help you to keep on track. After the implementation is done, you need to do a performance review. So a post-completion audit has to be done, and this acts as a feedback device which will help the company the next time that it has to go for another project. Now from this feedback, you will find out how realistic your assumptions were. You started the project based on certain assumptions about the economic environment. Second, you will also now have a documented log of experience, and you will know what works, what does not work. All right. And all this is going to be helpful the next time that you have to do a similar project. It helps in uncovering judgmental bias. All of us are subject to bias, and we must have made some kind of judgmental errors here and there. This feedback will help us in uncovering that. And finally, it will induce desired caution among project sponsors. By project sponsors, I mean people who are funding this project. They will also get a fair idea about whether to fund similar projects in the future or not. For investment criteria, we use discounting techniques or non-discounting techniques. Remember we said NPV, BC ratio, IRR, payback, ARR, alright? So of these, the NPV and the benefit cost ratio and the internal rate of return, we are saying they follow the discounting criteria, which means they take into account the concept of time value of money. The other two techniques, payback period and accounting rate of return, do not take into account the concept of time value of money. We will learn these details later on. Let's understand about capital budgeting under constraints, or in other words, what is known as capital rationing. A company will have limited funds and there are going to be n number of proposals which will come. So therefore, it will have to judiciously allocate these funds such that you get the maximum NPV, net present value. Now I am giving you a scenario out here where the company has 25 lakhs to spend, and these are the 5 proposals that it has. So maximum that it can spend is 25 lakhs. Our objective is that by spending 25 lakhs, it should be able to maximize the NPV. I have worked out 3 combinations out here. You can work out the rest. For example, if you take A and B, projects A and B, you will spend the 25 lakhs and you will get an NPV of 10,50,000. If you invest in projects B, C and D, you will spend your 25 lakhs and your NPV is going to be 12,50,000. If you take A and C, you are spending 23 lakhs, which is less than the 25 lakhs, but you are getting an NPV of 11 lakhs. Now, if you work out the other combinations also, you will have different answers. If we focus on these 3 combinations, you can obviously say that if I take up BCD, I will get a better NPV as compared to doing project A and B. So that is one choice. Alternatively, you can also say that I will take up project A and C where I am spending less than the 25 lakhs, that is the budget, and I am still getting a higher NPV as compared to A and B. Now you can use all kinds of reasoning to justify which combination you are going to select. The project proposals that we have, we can rank them depending on the NPV value and the IRR value. Normally your NPV and IRR should give you the same ranking, but there are circumstances where it will give you different ranking. And the circumstances are if there is time disparity, size disparity and life disparity. By time disparity, we are talking of the timing of the cash flows. Size disparity, we are talking of the initial outlay. Life disparity, we are talking of the length of the project. I will just explain what this means. Have a look at these 2 tables. There are 2 cash flow streams. On the left hand side, you can see that the amount starts from 100 and works up to 1000. Okay. So these are the values. These are the amount that will come over a period of 10 years. So if I convert it into present value, I find that the present value of the cash stream is 2903.8. And assuming that there is an initial outlay of 2000, my NPV will be 903.8. That is present value of the cash stream minus the initial outlay. Look at the cash flow stream on the right hand side. It starts from 1000, gradually goes down to 100. And the present value of this cash stream is 3854.6. And again, if I take the initial outlay to be 2000, the NPV is 1854.6. This difference is coming because of the timing of the cash flows. In the first case, it started from smaller amounts and worked to bigger amounts towards the end. And in the second case, it started with bigger amounts coming initially and with smaller amounts towards the end. So although the numbers range from 100 to 1000, you can see that there is a difference in the NPV. This is time disparity. Size disparity, where the initial outlay is different. Have a look at the two tables. Identical tables, identical present value of the cash stream. The only difference is in the initial outlay. And because of that, you can see that the NPV is different. In the first case, it is a positive NPV, and in the second case, it is a negative NPV. This is size disparity, where the initial outlay is different. Then you have unequal lives, that is the life disparity. So there is one which has a life of 10 years, another one which has a life of 5 years. The one with 10 years life is having a higher NPV as compared to the one with less number of years. So these were the explanations. Next, let us move to sources of positive NPV. What will contribute to having a positive NPV? As I explained, just keep in mind that profit is equal to revenue minus cost. The first point is economies of scale. When we say that a company has achieved economies of scale, we mean that it is able to reduce its cost of production per unit. So when the cost of production per unit goes down, even if the revenue remains constant, the profit is going to go up. All right. So if the profit is going to go up, it is going to contribute towards a positive NPV. The second point is product differentiation. Two products are differentiated, and the one which claims to have some higher kind of differentiation can charge a premium price. Let me give you an example. You have various category of soaps in the market. There are soaps which are priced at 10 rupees and there are soaps which are priced at 50 rupees a bar. And the one which is priced higher claims to have something more than just being an ordinary soap. So that is premium pricing. So when there is premium pricing, your revenue is going to go up much more as compared to the cost. Therefore, the profit will go up, and this will contribute towards having a positive NPV. Cost advantage is that in the market, your company has the lowest cost of production of that particular product. So therefore, you are having a cost advantage, and hence your profit margins are going to be higher, and this will contribute towards a positive NPV. Marketing reach. If you have a large marketing reach, obviously you will be selling more. So if you are selling more, your revenue is going to be higher and you will have a larger profit margin. Technological edge. You have the advantage of technology, so therefore you are producing better products or you are producing faster. If you're producing better products, you can go for premium pricing, your revenue will go up. Or if you are producing faster, which means that you can reach the market faster, you can sell more, and in that case also the revenue will go up. So this will contribute to your profit, which will again contribute to the positive NPV. Government policies also give you an advantage. If the government policy is such that your organization is getting some kind of subsidies or some kind of advantage, then it is possible that your profits will go up, and that will also contribute towards a positive NPV. So these are some of the sources of positive NPV of a project. So far we've been talking of capital budgeting decisions in quantitative terms. There are qualitative influences also. For example, intuition. If your company has company board of directors or the owner has some intuition that this is going to work, this product is going to work in the market, then there is no questions asked and you are funded for the project and you go ahead. So intuition. Vision. When the company is able to foresee that there is going to be a future demand for this project, so let us start working from now, then that has an influence on your capital budgeting decision. Superstition. It could be case like last time we tried out this kind of product and we were a big failure, so we are not going to touch those kind of products again in the future. So that is superstition. Politics. Even in the organizations there are lobbies. So you will have one lobby favoring one proposal, another lobby favoring another proposal, and they will influence your capital budgeting decision. Sponsorship. It also depends on the funding agency. The funding agency may also have a final word as to which project they are going to sponsor. And finally, intangible benefits. Sometimes, although your NPV is not very strong and yet you wish to set up that particular manufacturing unit, you are doing it for intangible benefits in the sense that that area is going to develop by virtue of having a manufacturing unit out there. So those are intangible, maybe societal benefits. All right. Or sometimes you do go ahead with your capital budgeting decision because it is going to earn you a lot of goodwill. Not much of profits, but it's going to earn you a lot of goodwill. All right. So therefore, that is also an intangible benefit. So these are some of the qualitative things that actually influence your capital budgeting decision. So with this, I conclude the basics of capital budgeting. Thank you very much for tuning in.